The envelope arrived in the regular Wednesday mail in March of 2022. White, business size. Clearwater Land Partners printed in the upper left corner. Vernon Hale brought it inside and opened it at the kitchen table after he had poured his coffee. He read it once, then set it down. The letter contained a formal appraisal summary, signed by a licensed Colorado appraiser, dated March 14, 2022. The assessed market value of parcel 2408212000009, 280 acres in Garfield County, Colorado, land Vernon Hale had owned and worked for 37 years, was listed at $127,000. Below the dollar figure, one sentence. Land classified as marginal agricultural, no mineral indicators, no development suitability, no premium valuation factors identified. Vernon sat with the letter for a long time. He drank his coffee. He looked out the kitchen window at the land. Then he carried the letter to the bedroom and put it in the drawer beneath Margaret's Bible, where he kept things he needed to think about. Margaret had always been the one who knew what to do with paper. Vernon Hale had been on this land since the spring of 1985. He was 67 years old. He had come to Garfield County at 30 with $4,200 in savings and no connections, having spent the 11 years before that working other men's ranches across 3 states. Hired hand in Montrose, fence crew in Laramie, irrigation work in the San Luis Valley. He had learned land the way you learn it when it belongs to someone else, carefully, with the understanding that he would not always be a renter. Every dollar he didn't spend was a dollar towards something he couldn't name yet. In 1985, he found the 280 acres in eastern Garfield County listed in a county agricultural circular. Rocky ground, a seasonal creek along the eastern fence line, a hayfield on the southern flat, and a long slope of pinyon and sage running to the northern ridge. Not promising land by most measures. The asking price was $43,000. Vernon had $38,400 saved. He borrowed $4,600 from a rancher he had worked for in Montrose, who believed him when he said he would pay it back. He paid it back in 14 months. He and Margaret had married in 1983, before the land. She followed him to Garfield County without complaint, leaving a teaching position in Pueblo she had held for 6 years. She never mentioned the sacrifice. She started a garden the first spring, in a patch of ground south of the house, and she planted it every spring for 36 years after that, until the spring she was too sick to kneel. Margaret died in October of 2021 from a pulmonary condition that declared itself quietly and moved fast. She and Vernon had been married 38 years. She kept every record of the property in a green metal filing cabinet in the hallway. Tax receipts, grazing leases, well maintenance logs, county correspondence, equipment warranties, water meter readings, organized by year in her handwriting, going back to 1985. Vernon had not opened the cabinet since she died. He knew her system. He knew where everything was. What he had not thought about in a very long time was the cardboard tube in the workshop. Margaret had found it the day they moved in. It was in the barn, propped in the corner behind an old hay fork. A brown mailing tube, 3 feet long, capped at both ends. She brought it inside and opened it. Inside was a rolled document on heavy paper, hand-drawn in blue and black ink with typed notations and a row of official stamps at the bottom right corner. She looked at it for a while, then re-rolled it and put it back in the tube and set it on the top shelf of the workshop's south wall, between a tin of old fasteners and a coil of baling wire. She said, "You never throw away something with an official seal on it." Vernon had not thought about that tube in 37 years. Tyler Marsh was 34 years old, licensed appraiser, commercial real estate certification from Colorado State University. He had joined Clearwater Land Partners 18 months earlier as their in-house valuation specialist, tasked with producing acquisition appraisals on rural and agricultural parcels in the western Colorado corridor. Clearwater's model was efficient. Identify low-assessed parcels, acquire them at or near assessed value, hold them, and transfer them when solar or mixed-use development conditions aligned. Marsh's role was to ensure the acquisition price stayed as low as legally defensible. He had appraised 31 parcels for Clearwater in those 18 months. Vernon Hale's property was number 32. He visited once, on a Tuesday in February, for 1 hour and 40 minutes. He noted the rocky terrain, the limited irrigated acreage, the absence of visible infrastructure improvements. He noted the creek as a seasonal waterway. He did not request a water rights history from the Colorado State Engineer's Office. He did not commission a geological review. He did not pull the county surveyor's archive for historical plat records. He classified the creek as seasonal, with no senior rights documentation, and assigned it no premium in his appraisal. He had done this 31 times before. Vernon was not the first man to receive a number that did not reflect what his land was worth. He would not be the last. 2 weeks after the appraisal letter arrived, Vernon drove to Grand Junction. He asked one question at the Clearwater office. He sat down across a conference table from Tyler Marsh and 2 other company representatives and asked whether the water rights on the creek had been included in the assessment. Marsh looked at him. He said, "Mr. Hale, you've got a seasonal creek that dries up in August. A creek like that doesn't carry water rights worth anything in this state." He said it with a small, patient smile. "That's just not how Colorado water law works for a property like yours." The 2 representatives said nothing. One of them looked out the window. Vernon thanked them and drove home. He sat in the truck in the driveway for a while after he got back. Then he went to the workshop. The tube was exactly where Margaret had put it. Top shelf, south wall, between the tin of fasteners and the baling wire, filmed with dust. Vernon carried it to the kitchen table. He removed both caps and unrolled the document carefully, using 2 coffee mugs to hold the curled edges flat. It was a survey. Hand-drawn on heavy cream paper, in blue and black ink, elevations marked in typed half-inch numerals, parcel lines precise and deliberate. The title block at the top read, "Garfield County Hydrological and Boundary Survey, Eastern Section. Commissioned by the Colorado State Engineer's Office, September 1961. 3 stamps and a notarial seal filled the bottom right corner. The paper had darkened at the edges but was intact. The ink was clear. Vernon read it slowly. He did not understand all of it. But in the lower left quadrant, along the line representing the eastern fence and the creek, there was a typed notation. He read it twice. It read, "Priority date of appropriation, June 14, 1887. Surface water rights. First adjudication, Colorado District Court, 1889. Confirmed senior appropriation." He sat still for a long time. Then he re-rolled the document, put it back in the tube, and called an attorney. Her name was Carol Fremont. She had practiced water law in Grand Junction for 31 years. Vernon described what he had found over the phone, and she asked him to bring the tube to her office the following morning. He drove the 47 miles in before 8 o'clock. She unrolled the survey on her conference table and read it without speaking. She turned it slowly. She read the notation on the eastern fence line. She read it again. She said, "How long has this been in your possession?" He said, "Since 1985. My wife found it in the barn when we moved in." She said, "I need to verify this before I tell you what I think it means." She picked up the phone and called the Colorado Division of Water Resources and asked them to pull the adjudication record for the appropriation referenced in the survey. She told Vernon to come back the next day. The record came back that afternoon. The creek running along Vernon Hale's eastern fence line had been adjudicated in 1889 as a senior water right, with a priority date of June 14, 1887, one of the oldest confirmed appropriations in Garfield County. Under Colorado's prior appropriation doctrine, which operates on the principle of first in time, first in right, a priority date of 1887 placed Vernon's water allocation ahead of virtually every other downstream user in the county. In a decade of compressing drought and municipal water shortages, a confirmed senior appropriation of that age and volume was not a marginal agricultural feature. It was among the most valuable unencumbered water rights in the region. Municipal water districts had been seeking to secure exactly this kind of senior allocation for years. Tyler Marsh had assigned it no premium. In 1 hour and 40 minutes. Fremont looked at Vernon across the conference table the next morning. She said, "They either didn't know this existed, or they knew and chose not to include it." Vernon said, "Is there a difference?" She said, "In court there is." Clearwater had sent Vernon a letter of intent to purchase the parcel at $127,000. Vernon had signed it, acknowledging receipt, before he had spoken to an attorney. Fremont filed to rescind the LOI on the grounds of material misrepresentation, specifically that Clearwater's appraisal had omitted a legally confirmed senior water right from its valuation, a right discoverable through standard state records, whose omission had induced Vernon's preliminary consideration of the offer. Clearwater's legal team did not go to court. They requested mediation. The session was held in a conference room in Grand Junction, 6 weeks after Fremont filed. Small room. Rectangular table, no windows, overhead lights. The mediator was a retired Garfield County judge named Harold Steen, 71 years old, 24 years on the bench, who conducted mediation with the same unadorned patience he had used in his courtroom. Clearwater arrived with 2 attorneys, matching leather folders across their side of the table. Their lead attorney opened with a revised offer, $600,000 for the parcel, which he characterized as a recognition of newly identified value factors in the water rights record. He spoke for 11 minutes. He said the 1887 appropriation added value, but that regional comparables supported a range of $550,000 to $650,000 for a parcel of this type. He said $600,000 was fair. He said it was a substantial increase from the original figure. He said it reflected Clearwater's good faith. Vernon was wearing his good boots. He had polished them the morning before the drive. He did not speak. He looked at Fremont. Fremont waited until the attorney had finished. Then she unrolled the 1961 survey on the table, set it flat with both palms, and turned it toward Judge Steen. She placed beside it a 1-page certification from the Colorado Division of Water Resources, confirming the adjudication, the priority date, and the current allocated volume. She placed beside that a letter from the Garfield County Water Conservancy District, dated 3 weeks earlier, expressing formal interest in acquiring senior water rights at figures consistent with current regional water market pricing for long-term municipal supply contracts. She said nothing further. Steen looked at the survey. He read the certification. He read the Conservancy District's letter. He set all 3 down and looked at Clearwater's side of the table. He said, "I'd like to give your team a few minutes." Clearwater's attorney stepped out. They were gone for 19 minutes. When they came back, the lead attorney said, "Clearwater is withdrawing its claim under the letter of intent. No revised offer, no counter, no further negotiation." They closed their folders and left. Vernon Hale signed a purchase agreement with the Garfield County Water Conservancy District 4 months later. The district had been in active negotiation to secure senior rights to supply a downstream municipal water delivery contract for the city of Rifle. Vernon's 1887 appropriation was the highest priority unencumbered senior right available in the corridor. The purchase price was $3,400,000, the 280 acres transferred with the water rights. At Vernon's request, a small residential parcel was carved from the northeastern corner. The house, the garden plot, the workshop. He kept that. Every term of the agreement was his. Tyler Marsh had found no premium valuation factors in 1 hour and 40 minutes. The 1961 survey had been on a workshop shelf for 37 years, put there by a woman who said you never throw away something with an official seal on it. Vernon called his daughter Claire that evening. She drove out from Denver the following Saturday. They walked the land together that morning, starting at the house and working east along the fence line toward the creek. They did not talk much. The field was dry and cold and bright. They walked the full eastern fence in silence, the creek running low and clear in the bed below the bank. They stopped at the far corner, where the fence met the tree line and the creek bent south. Vernon had always thought of this as the back of the land, the quietest part, furthest from the road. He had come here when he needed to think, for 37 years. Margaret had walked here with him in the early years, before her knees gave out. He and Claire stood there for a while. The creek moved. The sage was dry and still. There was nothing in particular to look at. They looked anyway. Then they turned and walked back. Margaret Hale carried a rolled survey from a barn on the first day she lived on this land. She found it, read it, and put it where it would survive. She said one sentence about it. She did not mention it again for 36 years because it did not need mentioning. She understood that the value of a thing is not determined by how often you discuss it. In 1985, she made a decision that took 11 seconds. In 2022, that decision was worth $3.4 million. She was not lucky. She was paying attention. If you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is for. Someone who understands that patience and precision are not passive. Next time, a 69-year-old man in Pike County, Kentucky, received a foreclosure notice on a property he had paid off in full 22 years earlier. The bank's own payment ledger, every transaction, every date, every line, became the instrument that stopped them. Subscribe and don't miss it. We'll see you there.